Welcome to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. We have a very special edition of Outta Pocket this week. We're talking everything football because this is Super Bowl season and we're in the thick of it. And probably the only person who's actually happy about all of this is Outta Pocket regular John Cox. John, I don't know how your team does it, but how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here, man. Go Birds.
Okay. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, we're on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio channel, you can see the ugly atrocity that John Cox is wearing this week. But you could also see a Trey Lance jersey behind our other guest from the Kamper Report. You may follow him on YouTube. It's Ben Kamperman. Ben, what's up, my guy?
I'm kind of mortified. I don't know if that's the right word to put it at our last loss, both coaching wise and just we can get into we will get into it later, but just very sad. And there are going to be some bold takes that I will make during this stream, but just be prepared.
Well, Ben, I'm glad you mentioned that because the show name is Outta Pocket, and I believe truly none of my takes are out of pocket. But let's say you, because, we have the 49ers and Eagles last week. The Eagles dominated, mainly because they were beating a fourth-string quarterback. We'll get John's take on that here soon, but Ben, what happened to your 49ers? What's your initial reaction to that game? What are those out-of-pocket takes, if you will?
Well, I think a lot of people say that this injury, and you guys have probably heard the opposite side as well of the whole injury with Brock Purdy. A lot of people say, oh, it's just football, it's just luck. I think I say on the contrary. I think it really was a scheme that Kyle Shanahan was trying to put in, and that specific play, it's basically where a tight end from the other end slides over, and his job is to block the defensive end. My thing is, if you're a coach and you're facing one of the best defensive ends in the league in Hassan Reddick, why do you slide a tight end to block one of the best defensive ends in the league? We saw against your very own Michael. We saw against your very own Micah Parsons. We had our undivided attention directed at him. But we didn't direct enough attention at Hassan Reddick, and I think that's a coaching problem. I think we should have paid more attention to him, and I think it is a schematic. I think it was kind of the coach's fault why Brock Purdy has to have has to have this injury. I think it's just a coaching problem.
Well, Hassan Reddick did make his presence known in the NFC Championship game. A huge reason why Philadelphia is playing in the Super Bowl, not this weekend, but a week from now. John, I want to get your take on this from an Eagles fan's perspective. How could the 49ers have competed against the Eagles? Because what we saw this past weekend was not a competition.
Yeah, the 49ers got outcoached. I think we touched on it already. Hassan Reddick has 19 and a half sacks now this season. He's a premier defensive end in the league. And the Eagles just ripped apart the 49ers on the ground. Once we figured out that we could run the ball on them, that was all we had to do. We came into this week thinking that the 49ers had the best defense in the NFL. It was never about Brock Purdy. It was about, hey, the 49ers have a great defense. Can Jalen Hurts and those weapons get past them? And we ended up putting 31 on them. Of course, that's not to say there weren't turnovers. There weren't things that helped us put 31 points on them. But at the end of the day, they couldn't stop us from getting in the end zone. I mean, we were running QB sneak from the 4-yard line, and we got a touchdown from it. So there was just no stopping it. This O-line is just incredible. It's so dominant. All of our trenches, just the best O-line, D-line combination in the league probably. You've got 8 guys on the defensive line. You can rush the quarterback or stop the run, and then you've got 5 guys up front that nobody can stop. So that's how you should build a team. You invest up front and let the rest do the work, I guess.
And that's a very good point you mentioned, because I've said for years the game is won and lost in the trenches. That's why I'm so glad that the Dallas Cowboys built their offensive line. It's one of the best offensive lines in the NFL over the last decade, ever since they spent that first-round pick on Tyron Smith. I don't think he'll be there. We'll surely touch on that some point this offseason, as it's a longer offseason for the Cowboys than it is the Eagles, unfortunately, for my sake. But we saw this past weekend how much each part of the game affects the other. How the offense, if they can't stay on the field against the Eagles defense because Hassan Reddick and other guys are pressuring them, then they're going to kick the ball off. And the Philadelphia Eagles, who had the number one offense, they're going to wear down the number one defense in the NFL in San Francisco, who I believe for the last 3 months has been the best team in the NFL. And then you just get one of those routes where it doesn't help that Josh Johnson came in, and then eventually Josh Johnson gets hurt, and you're playing Christian McCaffrey at quarterback. And Kyle Shanahan, I don't know if it's necessarily a coaching issue, because once you get to the second half and Josh Johnson's out with a concussion, Brock Purdy can't throw. He tore his UCL. You can't throw. So it completely limits your offense. Ben?
All right, well, I don't mean to interrupt or anything, but like you saw Brock Purdy throwing that ball, it was going like 2 yards and then it would flutter out and die. Like the only thing he could do was screens. And as a coach, like I don't know why you have to call those type of play action plays when you know Hassan Reddick is going to be. We knew that the right side for the 49ers was a problem. Why do we have to call those type of plays? And that's where I think Kyle Shanahan, his ego gets in the way of his play calling. And that's why, I don't know, the 49ers need to really consider if in a few years we still haven't won a Super Bowl and we're just getting close every year. We have aging veterans on this team. And I just think that we need to consider maybe getting rid of him and getting more of a coach that, I don't know, is willing to adjust and not let his ego get in the way of his play calling, because that's a play that he likes to call a lot. The play that Brock Purdy got injured on, but it just wasn't a fit against the Eagles because their defensive line is so good.
Wow. I did not expect that out of pocket take.
Yeah.
That releasing Kyle Shanahan, at least you gave him a few years. I feel like fans, just in general, you can give coach a lot of leeway, but when you look at your roster and you're like, we got the quarterback, we got the running back, we got the receiver, we got the O-line, we got the defense. When you're starting to look at there and you're like, well, what's the problem? Oh, maybe the offensive coordinator, maybe the defensive coordinator. And at that point, now it's like, okay, maybe the head coach is the actual problem, and we just need a new voice in the locker room. And John, that's kind of what the Eagles went through at a period with Andy Reid. Andy Reid kind of lost the locker room. They needed a new voice. They thought that new voice was Chip Kelly. He lasted, 2-3 years? But then you guys got Nick Sirianni. I don't like Nick Sirianni, mainly because he came out with this shirt saying beat Dallas, and then obviously the Cowboys beat him. So now we got this beat by Dallas that our YouTube viewers can watch. But when John, you said it was out coaching. What did you see from Nick Sirianni that made this game a win for the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of incredible that we went from, a Super Bowl MVP or a Super Bowl caliber coach in Andy Reid, got us to the Super Bowl at least. Went through 3 Chip Kelly years, got into Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson takes us to the Super Bowl in his second year. He's driven out by his 4th year, which is insane. I didn't like that firing at the time. Nick Sirianni comes in. It's his second year, new quarterback, new coach. We're in the Super Bowl second year. That's special. That's it doesn't happen a lot in the NFL. Most teams are lucky to get one good coach every 10 years, and it seems like the Eagles have had maybe 3 in that span. And, for all the stuff Chip Kelly did, he did make the playoffs one of his years. So there's something to be said for Chip Kelly, but I'm not going to defend him ever. But yeah, I mean, just coaching wise, like I said, the run game, once they identified that they could run on the 49ers, that's what they did. They just put their head down in the sand. They said, we're going to run the ball. And that's all they had to do. This roster is so talented that, I think it's crazy how many flowers you have to give away for this Eagles team, because everybody deserves flowers all around this organization, ownership, GM. It's probably the most talented roster in the NFL. And what's crazy to say is I don't even know if this roster is better than the 2017 roster. To be completely honest with you, I don't know if that's a hot take. But yeah, I mean, from coaching, ownership, GM, it's all amazing. It's awesome. It's a great time to be an Eagles fan. That's what I'll say.
I bet you're happy right now seeing your team in the Super Bowl again.
I will say that your receiving core and I think offensively your team, I would say, is better than it was in 2017 with a guy like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I don't know. I think, and then the offensive line is really, I think, a lot better than it was. So, yeah, I don't know if I agree with you on that point, but maybe the defense is worse.
Can we talk about this for a second? And I know we may have covered it a couple months ago. A.J. Brown, and John, you mentioned the general manager. That is a perfect example. The Titans end up trading A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles GM is getting praised, and he always seems to figure out how to do these trades. And if a trade doesn't work out, if a free agent doesn't work out, I think DeMarco Murray, they're able to get him out of the area pretty quickly. But Titans general manager's looking for a job now because of this A.J. Brown deal. I just how do you guys do it?
Yeah, we're in the Super Bowl and we have the number 10 overall pick in the year's NFL draft. So not only in the Super Bowl competing, we have a chance to win a Super Bowl, but we're going to add a top 10 talent to our NFL team, a blue chipper, someone on the D-line, someone on the defense. I mean, it's a perfect season. I mean, you couldn't have written it any better. It's incredible.
John, I'm so upset, man. I can't even hide it, and nor will I. But what we haven't, what we haven't hid is Kansas City was supposed to be Burrowhead. That was the talk all the last week. Joe Burrow, undefeated in Kansas City in Arrowhead, beat them in Arrowhead, Burrowhead, to make it to the Super Bowl last year. And it looked like it was trajectorying that way. Patrick Mahomes playing on one foot. Bengals had a pretty great roster. And then all of a sudden, an unnecessary roughness call on the sideline, which a lot of people were upset, mad about. That was the right call. I don't think that's Outta Pocket saying quarterbacks, in the white and you're shoving them. You should know how to play better than that. Unfortunately, that set up a field goal for Kansas City to win and win the game off of that. Didn't feel like Kansas City earned it in the moment, but it felt like Kansas City's earned this spot in the Super Bowl the entire year. Ben, I'll start with you. What does this say in terms of the Cincinnati Bengals? Is this a failure for them losing in the AFC title game?
Yes and no. I think there was a little bit of an unlucky streak because they lost both of a bunch of offensive linemen. But I think the Chiefs so well, you should be able to execute a defensive game plan to stop Patrick Mahomes. But I think it's more of a knock. I don't really blame the Bengals very much, because I think it's more of a praise to Patrick Mahomes than it is to the Bengals. I think that just shows how great of a player Patrick Mahomes is. Patrick Mahomes, he has a high ankle sprain. He's still going to scramble for whatever 8 yards on third or fourth down at the very end of the game and then pick up that penalty flag. And that's just how great of a player. He's going to take one for the team to get to a Super Bowl. He will do whatever it takes to win. And I think that's just how great of a player he is, how great of a coach Andy Reid is. And I mean, Andy Reid at this point, if he wins another Super Bowl, he is close to Belichick as one of the best coaches in the league. So no, I really wouldn't blame it on the Bengals. The only thing I would blame on it, blame this game on them, is the first quarter. They started out way too slow. So,
Ben, just for clarification, are you saying Andy Reid would be the best coach in the NFL right now, along with Belichick, or all time?
No, I would say all time. Well, yeah, I guess right now,
okay.
Close to all time. But that's another discussion for a different day, probably for the off season. I haven't looked into that topic enough to say all time, but he's up there.
Ben, I'm going to mark that down. I'm going to get you back on Out of Pocket to defend that take. But Andy Reid would accomplish something that no other coach in NFL history has ever accomplished. No coach has ever won a Super Bowl with one team and then went back and won a Super Bowl with another. Except Andy Reid did not win for the Philadelphia Eagles because Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. So just wanted to rub that in, seeing if John got his hopes up. I'm just saying. John.
They cheated. That's all I'll say. They cheated. They cheated in the Super Bowl. It's fine.
Hey,
it's fine.
But you know who could do that? Mike McCarthy, if next year works out. But John, I know we're going to talk more about the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles next week, right before the Super Bowl Sunday. But real quick about the Cincinnati Bengals before we get into a break, what do you think they need to do to equip themselves this offseason to put themselves in position to actually make back to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for them as an offseason. They just gotta kind of use the same approach they did last year. Shore up that offensive line. Injuries really hurt them. Obviously, they're gonna make some tough decisions when it comes to re-signing some guys too. Joe Burrow is getting close to needing to be re-signed, and he could be like a $50 million a year guy. That's a large portion of your cap. Luckily for all the NFL teams, the cap is going up next year. I think it's like 16 million or something like that. So, he could be even more. He could be paid even more. It's tough because you also got to re-sign a guy like Jamar Chase who, would command something incredible if he were to hit the free market. So it's tough. I know a lot of people are thinking about coaching changes, stuff like that, but I think it really came down to roster construction and just not being healthy at the right time, really.
And that's a good point because not a lot of people are realizing they were without 2 of their 5 offensive linemen. They were without, I believe, their left side. Also, right tackle Lyle Collins got hurt in December, out for the year. I mean, Cincinnati, they were able to hold on to the pieces a lot. Even win to Buffalo the week before Kansas City and upset the Buffalo Bills, which was an emotional game because of the DeMar Hamlin stuff. But unfortunate Cincinnati season ends. Unfortunate San Francisco season ends. I know Ben's not too happy about that. But
I will say real quick to Jalen Hurts. It's going to be the same with Jalen Hurts as well. So both teams could be facing a similar dilemma. I'm just saying.
And now's the time for those teams to win because Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, all on rookie deals. There's a very particular window when it comes to the salary cap. But we'll talk more about the Super Bowl next week. But when we come back, we have to announce Tom Brady retired from the NFL, in his words, for good. Whatever that means, who knows? I'm a wrestling fan, so who knows if everybody's retired. But we're going to talk about Tom Brady's legacy. Is he truly the GOAT? And is somebody playing in the NFL could surpass him in the time to come? We're talking about that next on Out of Pocket with Michael Davis. Welcome back to Out of Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. And everyone's going to rejoice this week on the show because Tom Brady has called it quits after 23 seasons. He spent the amount of years that was on Michael Jordan's jersey. He's won 7 Super Bowls, more than any franchise in NFL history. One player, more Super Bowls than any NFL team. And that poses a question. Even though John said they cheated in one of those Super Bowls, or maybe 2 or 3, John, I'm going to pose this to you since you feel so adamantly about this. Is Tom Brady the greatest of all time? I don't even know if we can put greatest quarterback of all time, but maybe he's in the discussion for greatest player of all time.
Yeah, of course, Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. No one has ever been as committed to anything as Tom Brady has been committed to football. He redefined dieting. He redefined, keeping your body in shape. He redefined the way that you recover after you work out and after you play the game, especially a game like football. I mean, it's basically like you're going out there every Sunday night and getting in multiple car crashes, and then he's just repairing his body after that. It's incredible, and he did it for 23 years. Hats off to him. He was committed. He was a competitor. Obviously, like one of the most competitive people that's probably ever lived. He's got that same thing. Whatever Michael Jordan has, Tom Brady has the same thing. Whether you want to call it killer instinct or just like a burning desire to win, Tom Brady has that. He's got 7 rings. I don't know if anybody will ever come close to 7 rings in the NFL again. You got to give him his flowers, and yeah, easily the best.
Ben, is Tom Brady your GOAT?
As much as I think that, like, I hate him, and I think Joe Montana is a great player, but yes, I would say he is. It's just like, it's so hard as an athlete myself to go through, especially, the NFL lasts for such a long time each year, like months and months over again. And I know that I'm a cross country runner or in the fall, and that's the most intensive sport that I do. And that sport only lasts like 3 months. If you're doing football for 8-9 months, imagine the wear and tear on your body over and over again. And he did it for 23 seasons. And there were multiple Super Bowl runs that the Patriots had, and even the Buccaneers, where he was dealing with injuries. He was dealing with stuff. Not to mention, he also tore his ACL midway through his career. So to come back from that ACL injury, some players never do, and really play even better, is really just a testament to him. But I've never liked Tom Brady. Don't like I don't like him. But yes, he is a very good player, and I would call him the GOAT for sure.
And people don't like him because he was so good. And I just don't believe we'll ever see a player like him. And I just want to read off some stats for you. And I know a lot of people listening probably don't like Tom Brady, but you, myself, we all have to give him his flowers. We have to give him his props because he ranks the first all time. And before I say all this, what do we measure a quarterback by? We always measure him by Super Bowls, by wins, passing yards, passing touchdowns. Like, that's the measure we've given to quarterbacks. Team success. He ranks first all time in wins, 251. Ranks first in Pro Bowls, whatever that's worth nowadays. Tyler Huntley's a Pro Bowl quarterback, apparently, after 2 touchdowns. But Tom Brady, first, 15. 5 Super Bowl MVPs. 5 of his 7 Super Bowls, he's won the MVP. People don't win 5 Super Bowls, let alone 5 Super Bowl MVPs. Led the league completions, led the league in attempts, led the league in passing yards, 89,000. Led the league in passing touchdowns, 649. In the playoffs, we measure a quarterback by the playoffs. He has the most playoff appearances in NFL history, 20. Games started, 48. Wins, 35. Okay, if you have a 35-13 record in the playoffs as a starting quarterback, all of a sudden you're in your own category. 10 Super Bowl appearances. We've said 7 Super Bowls. Passing yard postseason leader with over 13,000. Passing touchdowns, 88. This is the one that gets me, and I feel like this is why we hate Tom Brady as fans of other teams, whether it be Philadelphia or San Francisco or Dallas. A lot of our viewers are Carolina fans. Game-winning drives in the playoffs leads the league, 14. Fourth quarter comebacks, 9, including 28-3 in the Super Bowl against Atlanta. Tom Brady is, and everybody hates him. So it's like, okay, you're automatically like turning the TV off. He's the GOAT. Like, I don't know how you can argue it. But I do want to say, if this was WWE, I could go ahead and say that the Dallas Cowboys retired Tom Brady and ended his career. John, I don't know if you can get a better accolade than that.
You have to give the Cowboys something, even if they're tremendous losers.
Yeah. How about you give the Eagles credit for beating him in the Super Bowl?
Exactly.
Yeah, but Tom Brady came back and won more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we beat him at the peak of his powers, man. We defeated Superman when he was at his best. And he
I
couldn't
remember
beat us.
that 2017 Super Bowl. We have Patriots fans, and they were like, nobody was picking the Eagles to win. And as much as I really don't like the Eagles, they did something impossible that Super Bowl. They really did.
I think the word you're trying to think of is fluke. Okay. But no.
Dallas has been fluked.
It was a fluke win. What else can you say?
There's not a team in NFL history that would have beat the Philadelphia Eagles in that Super Bowl, man. It was a team of destiny moment. It was magic. Nick Foles caught a touchdown on a 4th and 3. We stripped him on a game-winning drive. I mean, you can't write it better. It doesn't get better. It just doesn't.
Fluke.
Nope.
Fluke. You know what? And that's all hypothetical, theorizing. Oh, no team was going to beat the Eagles. I have a fact. No team in NFL history has broken the spirit of Tom Brady to make him retire, and I quote, for good, except the 5-time Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys. So take with that what you will. I've heard this a lot since we all agree who our GOAT is. I think my top 3 would honestly be Brady 1. I put in Peyton Manning 2, and that might be a little biased because I grew up in the Brady Manning era. And then I'm putting Joe Montana 3. If you look at how clutch he was in the playoffs and Super Bowls, as much as I don't like San Fran, I know Ben probably likes that answer. Ben, if you had a top 3, what would you have?
I would say Brady. I think Montana's close. And even though he doesn't even have Super Bowl, like he doesn't have as many Super Bowl appearances and wins as Tom Brady, I think and you could make this same argument about Michael Jordan and LeBron James. If Joe Montana had those resources to him, I'm sure he would have worked just as hard and just as long as Tom Brady did, and to perfect his body. And he maybe would have lasted longer in the league. So I'm going to make that same argument. But still, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, and then I want to say the one quarterback that I've enjoyed watching, and this is just my preference, and I don't think he's the best, but Steve Young probably. I've loved the running abilities that he brought to the game. He's not top 3 for anybody else, but he was truly amazing to watch. So
he's a top 3 for a 49ers fan. But we'll just give it out like that. John, I swear if you put Donovan McNabb in your top 3, we're kicking you off the radio show.
Yeah, my top 3 would be the exact same as yours, actually, Boomer. I'd put Brady, Manning, and then Montana. But if I had to do, I'll just do top 3 that I've seen play. Kind of like since I started watching football, I would put Brady 1, obviously, and then I'd probably go Rodgers, and then I want to put Pat Mahomes there, but it feels early. But like the things he does is just so incredible. If I had to do a number 3 just off of how much fun I had watching them, I would definitely put Michael Vick in that category. Came to the Eagles. 2010 had like an MVP caliber season. He was amazing for us that year. It was awesome to watch Vic play with Deshaun Jackson and LaShawn McCoy. Those were some nice teams. Those were fun to watch. So, but yeah, I'd have the same as you, Boomer.
Yeah, just so you guys know, I'm not a homer because I ain't putting Cowboy quarterbacks in there. And then Ben's going to drop Steve Young, and then John drops Michael Vick of all players.
I loved watching Michael Vick. He kind of reminds me a little bit of what Steve Young was too. I mean, the bombs that he used to drop to Deshaun Jackson. So,
and John, you mentioned Patrick Mahomes. You kind of want to put him there. And I've been watching a lot of sports talk shows this last week, and a lot of people are wanting to put Patrick Mahomes up in that category already. Do you think if Mahomes, like, is he going to last as long as Tom Brady? Probably not. But do you think by the end of his career, he could get top 3, maybe top 2 as a quarterback in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, like, at the beginning of the season, they trade away Tyreek Hill and everybody's going, this offense can't be the same as it was last year. This guy can't be as good as he is last year. He's only got Travis Kelce now, and then he's got Valdez Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster. Like, it can't happen. And then, he changes his offense. He changes the way he plays. He's taking underneath throws. He'll give you the deep ball if he needs to, but there's not a throw that any other human being can make that Patrick Mahomes can't. That's the thing. And then you add the ability to move around in the pocket, to scramble, to get yards with his feet. Because of that, I don't think he plays as long, obviously. He's taking more hits than Brady. But no, I mean, it's not absurd to think that he'll be top 3 by the time he retires. I would love to see how he is if he ever has to play without Andy Reid, because I think that's a huge boost. All the schemes that he provides, all the play calling that he provides. That's not to take away from Pat Mahomes and what he's done, because coaching it's never only coaching that wins a Super Bowl. You got to be a special player to do it. But it'll be interesting to see what Pat Mahomes looks like in a post Andy Reid era, if that ever happens.
If that ever happens, it may be one of these situations where Belichick stayed long enough for Brady, and that marriage was good until it wasn't, and Brady went to Tampa and won a Super Bowl there. It would be very interesting to see Mahomes in a different system with different coach, how much that coach were to rely on Patrick Mahomes doing the play calling. Ben, would you put Patrick Mahomes or see him in that top 3 down the road?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I go back to earlier, you talked about, John talked about all the different arm angles. I go back to this year against the Broncos where he's rolling right and then he throws to his left to Jerick McKinnon, and that turns into a touchdown. The 49ers game, it was a 3rd and 21. They throw a screen to Jerick McKinnon, and McKinnon takes it 21 yards. He picks up a first down, almost a touchdown. Just the things that you can do with him are incredible. And he's having his best season, but he's been doing it consistently now for 4 years. And that's, I don't like quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson or different quarterbacks that have had MVP seasons are good, but they haven't sustained that success that Patrick Mahomes has. They haven't been good year after year like Patrick Mahomes. So absolutely, he's going to be top 3 for me for sure. But I will say, the one coach that would not do good with Patrick Mahomes, I think he would, but I think he would get him injured, and that's Kyle Shanahan. So gets every quarterback injured. I don't understand. 4 quarterbacks injured in one season.
Ben is going off on Kyle Shanahan. He might as well try to be, who would you want other than Kyle Shanahan as your coach?
I don't know. I mean, he's a good coach, but it's just like you got Trey Lance injured running up the middle. You got Jimmy Garoppolo injured on a play action where it was actually almost the exact same play as when Brock Purdy got injured. And basically some guy rolled up on his foot, but it wasn't a good play call. And then you had Brock Purdy got injured in the NFC Championship game, and then Josh Johnson getting injured, which I think that Eagles tackle should have been flagged that they had on Josh Johnson when he had the concussion, but that's another story for another day. So,
and RG3, he also ran RG3.
Oh, RG3 as well. Yeah, that's true.
Wow, the evidence is stacking up against Kyle Shanahan. Not to mention he played a role in the 28-3, where Tom Brady came back and won one of his 7 Super Bowls in the NFL. And again, I'll go ahead and say it before we go into a break. That is special. That we can all sit here and say Tom Brady is unanimously the GOAT. And maybe Patrick Mahomes reaches that area, but it could be just kind of like LeBron chasing Jordan, where Mahomes can chase Brady, but that career is unparalleled. But we're going to get into a break. When we come back, we're going to continue talking some NFL stuff. I know Ben doesn't want Kyle Shanahan in the building, but we have some few hirings around the NFL. Houston Texans, Denver Broncos, Carolina Panthers, and we're going to talk about these hirings and what we expect from the organizations moving forward when we come back on Out of Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Welcome back to Out Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. This has been a really good episode so far. We're just talking football. And this is why the fall is my favorite time of year. You get to watch football. You get to talk with your buddies. I get to call up John on a random day. I get to call up Ben. Ben and I were on the phone earlier talking.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to say, this is something that I brought up to Michael earlier. I was talking to my brother about how Michael Davis for probably a month and a half had been in hiding. And especially after the Cowboys versus 49ers game when we beat him. And I was like, maybe he's just scared of me now. Like he's being a typical Cowboys fan. And then you called me up 10 minutes after I had that conversation with my brother. So it was what a coincidence. Anyways, sorry to interrupt, but I thought that was funny. So
what a coincidence, what a God thing. I'm not in hiding, okay? I've been here. I've been on Out Pocket with Michael Davis. I've been talking football. Talked about the Cowboys. Actually, I didn't, so I kind of slid out of that one. When you can organize a show not to talk about the Cowboys, which is very, very disappointing that the Cowboys season ended. But NFL, it's not just a fall sport. It's 24/7. It's building your team throughout. Once we get done with the Super Bowl, we're going straight into free agency, and then you're preparing for the draft. And then after the draft, that's when teams are like pretty organized. And the summer's kind of a lull. I'm busy in the summer anyways, John and I. But we get training camp. We see, how these teams are meshing with these rookies. And this time of year, while, a couple teams are still fighting for a Lombardi trophy, other teams are not. Some teams have fired coaches. I thought there was going to be more coaching vacancies this year. Seems like the numbers dipped from past years. And one of the biggest names in the coaching search was Sean Payton. Sean Payton is now going to go to the Denver Broncos. He retired. He stepped away from the game. He was still under contract with the Saints. And so the Saints are actually going to get capital from this Broncos deal. They'll send Sean Payton to Denver, and he's going to be paired up with Russell Wilson. And I'm going to go ahead and say it before, I have you guys jump in. It's not out of pocket, but I truly believe that Sean Payton is going to revitalize the career of Russell Wilson. You had Nathaniel Hackett. We went from Pete Carroll to Nathaniel Hackett and a completely new system. It was just not going to work from the start. And now with Russell Wilson working with Sean Payton, who's worked with Drew Brees for all those years, kind of masked some of the deficiencies in Drew Brees' game as he got older. This is the perfect situation for Russell Wilson. And Ben, I know you watched Russell Wilson as a Seahawks quarterback.
Oh man, that was the worst.
And this was uncharacteristic of a season for Russell Wilson. Do you think the Sean Payton hire helps Russell Wilson get back to form?
Absolutely. I think it does. The one thing that I think is the biggest concern with this Broncos team, obviously, and everyone's been talking about it, but the Broncos offensive line, and I think the 49ers face a similar situation. They can't draft they don't have a first round pick, the Broncos. I'm pretty sure now with this trade. So they can't really draft a top tier offensive lineman, so to speak, in the first round to kind of fix up that whole offensive line. And that was a big thing why Russell Wilson he was doing bad, but it was also the offensive line as well was not good at all. But Sean Payton, offensively, he's a very offensive-minded coach. He has the receivers. He should have the receivers. And then he has the running backs coming back. I'm forgetting his name right now, but he tore his ACL in the season for the Broncos, the running back. And so he should have all the weapons he needs. And you saw what he could do with Drew Brees, like Michael said, and all the weapons that the Saints had. He has similar talent in Denver. So, yes, I think he will turn this organization to around, especially. And I think it's going to be especially more important if that defensive coach stays on the Broncos, because I know he was getting looked at by other teams for head coaching possibilities as well. Ashiro Evero, that's his name. So.
Hey, Ben, anytime you want to come on the show and be like, yeah, I agree with you, Michael, as Michael said, and referencing whatever, like the Drew Brees, Sean Payton, you're welcome anytime, even with that San Francisco stuff in the background.
Yeah. I mean, I think we agree on a lot of things except our teams, because I hate the Cowboys and also the Eagles. But yeah.
John, I'm just sorry. We're not pulling for you. But John, the interesting part of this is Russell Wilson and Sean Payton might be a good pairing, but they are in the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. They're in the AFC West with the Chargers, Justin Herbert. With the Raiders, who knows what's there if they retain Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, get a new quarterback in there. This could be a very tough division to turn things around. How much do you think that plays a role?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, nobody's going to win the AFC West barring a Patrick Mahomes injury, probably for the next 3 years. Realistically, it could be up to like 5 years, just with the play of Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Of course, we talked about how good Mahomes was already. But yeah, it's a tough division. That's why I was hoping Sean Payton would end up in LA with the Chargers, with Justin Herbert, with a young guy he could really mold and unlock fully. With him, with Russell Wilson in Denver, we kind of touched on deficiencies, but a lot of people credit the success of Russell Wilson with the success of Drew Brees. When Drew Brees came into the league, it was he's too short, he's too little, he can't play quarterback. And if there was no Drew Brees, a lot of people say there would be no Russell Wilson. So we'll see what he can do. I'm not the biggest Sean Payton fan as a person. Just because of Bountygate and all that stuff. Not the biggest Sean Payton guy, but we'll see what he can do. I don't expect him to win the division. Maybe make the playoffs, nice little run, but I don't see anything more than that for the Broncos.
That was a throwback reference right there, the Bountygate. A lot of people forget about that. And you mentioned the Chargers. How do the Chargers still keep Brandon Staley on the coaching staff, Ben? I don't get it. You blow that 27-0 lead to the Jaguars, and with all that talent, you're still going to keep Staley on?
Here's the thing. I think this is why the Chargers haven't been good for so long, and I don't think they will be good for quite a while to come, because you have somebody like, and I know Sean Payton, I mean, even with all the Saints were a really good team a few years ago, and he can only bring them past the divisional round. So they were a good team, but he's a good coach. I don't think he's the best, but I will say you pair him up with Justin Herbert as a quarterback. I was thinking probably week 18, I was like, okay, Brandon Staley's probably gone, and I'm afraid to see Justin Herbert and Sean Payton pair, because I don't care how good of a coach Sean Payton is. All you need is an above average coach, which I don't think Brandon Staley is. And your team, this Chargers team, is an instant Super Bowl contender. And all you have to do is, this is easier said than done, but just fix up the defense a little bit. And this team is set. And you could maybe even trade, what's his name? Keenan Allen, and get some picks from him. He's aging. So I don't know. It's a mystery to me why they kept Brandon Staley.
Yeah. Some teams need to move off their coaches. Some teams just need to keep a coach in the building. And what comes to mind is the Houston Texans, who have fired their coach after one season in back-to-back years, firing Lovie Smith. And then they go hire DeMeco Ryans, who was the 49ers defensive coordinator. Ben, you saw DeMeco Ryans as a defensive coordinator in San Francisco. I'm sure you're sad to see him go. Do you think this was the right move for Houston, and honestly for DeMeco Ryans to go into this situation?
I think there's old ties there. I don't exactly. I think if there's going to be maybe a lot longer. Like people are saying, like maybe give him 1 year. If he fails in the first year, then fire him. I say maybe on the contrary, because that organization is so screwed up that I think it's going to take a few years for him to actually get going. So I don't think he's a one and done coach. I think he's going to be a good coach. I mean, he's a good leader. My impressions of him, he's a very good leader. He comes from a linebacking background. He was brought on to the 49ers by Robert Saleh. They used to be friends when he played in Houston, because Robert Saleh was actually the linebacking coach in Houston when DeMeco Ryans was there. So that's very interesting. I think he's a great leader. What he's done with the defense, I mean, that it was incredible this year, what they did. And so I think he's going to be a great coach. I wish him nothing but the best, but it is a little weird why he wanted to go there. I think that organization is seriously screwed up. So we'll see what he does there.
Well, he did play for the Texans.
Yeah.
He also did play for John's Philadelphia Eagles for a time. John, do you think this was the right move for DeMeco Ryans to take on this rebuilding project? He did get a 6-year contract. So hopefully he doesn't get fired after a year. But John, if you were DeMeco, what would you have done?
I think if you get the opportunity to coach a team in the NFL, you probably should take it, especially if it's your first time. You know, Sean Payton, obviously, Payton has kind of the liberty to choose and shop around, you know, do whatever. But, you know, when you're a guy like DeMeco Ryans, you know, if you get your first chance, you know, I'm sure he's, you know, a competitive guy. He wants to win. I'm sure that there's not a situation that he can think of that he doesn't think he can turn around personally. So I think it was a good hire by the Texans. There's a lot to do there, but there's also a lot to work with. They've got the Browns first round picks for like the next 2 years and this year. So I think they have 2 top 10 picks this year. I could be mistaken. But, you know, a lot of opportunity, a lot of stuff to turn around. We'll just have to see what he does. But, yeah, I'm a big DeMeco Ryans guy. I like him. I'm surprised we're not talking about the Cowboys letting go of Kellen Moore, though. I feel like that would be bigger news than it has been. The Cowboys losing their play caller.
Well, let's dive into that real quick, because Dallas is one of those teams that I kind of referenced. I believe it was the last segment or 2 segments ago, where you're looking, okay, you got your quarterback, you got your running back, you got your receiver, you got your O-line, you got your defense. What's going wrong? And it wasn't defensive coordinator, because Dan Quinn has done a phenomenal job. Head coach, do you want to give up on Mike McCarthy right now? You need to make a change. And I feel like we're going to make a change at running back. I feel like they want to commit to Dak. And I feel like they haven't given up hope on Mike McCarthy. So what do? Kellen Moore called the plays. The plays got a little too predictable at points in the game, especially down the stretch. You're cutting ties with Kellen Moore, not necessarily firing him, but mutually parting ways. And people forget this. Dak Prescott, as a rookie, beat out Kellen Moore as the starting quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, as a 4th-round pick. How much can Kellen Moore do for the progression of Dak? I think that's the big part, is if you're trying to let your star quarterback progress in the way that he needs to, how much can Kellen Moore teach them? So, like Mike McCarthy call the plays, I feel like this is a really like, hey, if you want your job, if you want to keep moving forward, you call the plays and don't pin this on anybody else. And let's get somebody in the building who can help Dak Prescott progress as the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, John, do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with it, but like the Cowboys have been a top 5 scoring offense with Dak and Kellen Moore for like the past 3 years, haven't they? I mean, they were electric. You know, they had some injury problems this year. It doesn't help that they traded away probably Dak's favorite target, right? Would you say that's what?
Amari Cooper was reliable,
right? Amari Cooper was that guy. You know, slant, in route, whatever you needed, he was going to run it for you. You know, they gave up they got like a 5th-round pick for him or something crazy. And now you have, you know, like I think CeeDee Lamb's a beast. I think CeeDee Lamb's great. I think he has as much upside as a lot of other wide receivers in the NFL. But then, I mean, you've got Zeke, who, the tires are kind of falling off. He's just getting to that age. He was a star running back in college, which is always a red flag. They ran him into the ground his rookie season. He was the offense the rookie season. But then, you have Tony Pollard, and then Tony Pollard leaves the game. So I don't think it's fair to pin it on Kellen Moore, especially when he had success, when he had the pieces around him to be successful. I think the bigger problem is probably GM/ownership.
Well, that's been the story for who knows how long. But it's Jerry Jones's team. He can do whatever he wants. I mean, but they've put good talent in the building. And that's a big credit to Will McClay. And Tony Pollard leaving that 49ers game a couple weeks ago was probably the reason why that game started to go south. I know you were watching that, Ben. Are you shocked to see Kellen Moore leave Dallas, then part ways, and then even go to LA and be the offensive coordinator for Herbert?
I would say, well, first thing for the Cowboys, I think it's anytime you have a head coach, he's going to be, you just said Mike McCarthy's going to now be calling the offensive plays. And I don't know, Kyle Shanahan did that this year, and I don't like that philosophy that the Cowboys are doing. Anytime a coach does that, you saw Doug Peterson when he was in Philly, Frank Reich left, and immediately the next season there was a huge drop off in coaching. And ask any Philadelphia fan, that's what they'll tell you. So, I think that's not a great philosophy. I think there probably is going to be a drop off in that offense. And as far as Kellen Moore goes, you pair up, you said with Justin Herbert, right?
Yeah, Justin Herbert. He's the new offensive coordinator for the Chargers.
That could be good for Staley, If you bring in a new system, maybe you still have a lot of talent. It's going to make Kellen Moore look really good. So, and take a little bit of the heat off of Brandon Staley.
I think it actually put some heat on Brandon Staley because Kellen Moore's interviewed for head coaching jobs the last couple of years. Hasn't gotten them. He goes to the LA. I'm still shocked Brandon Staley has a job after that blowout. Maybe they're like, hey, if things don't work out this year with Staley, you're next in line for the head coaching job. If it does, then you're probably still getting interviews elsewhere based on the success of that offense. That's just my theory.
One thing that I will say with this whole head coaching thing, or like the whole thing with all these teams, I was a little perplexed that the Broncos, DeMeco Ryans chose the Texans over the Broncos, and that the Broncos, they said that Sean Payton was their third choice. That would have been my first choice. So I was a little bit, surprised to hear that. Definitely, it came as a shock to me. So,
hey, if anything, DeMeco Ryans doesn't want to play Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert's 4 times a year, or B, DeMeco Ryans is a homer, just like John with the Eagles, just like you with the 49ers with your Steve Young and Joe Montana take. And I'm not a homer. I'm none of my takes are out of pocket. It's all right. Philly, last time we met up, you got beat by Dallas, but we are against the hour. We got franchise players right after this as part of your TGI Friday lineup on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM. If you love hearing Ben's really bold out-of-pocket takes on the 49ers, he has a YouTube channel, the Kamper Report. You go check that out. John, you can catch him as an out-of-pocket regular. He's earned that title now. Thank you so much, John, for being a huge part of the success of the show. I'm not wishing you luck in the Super Bowl, but that's with you. And if you haven't yet, go follow the Tobacco Road Sports Radio YouTube channel. That's where you can catch the video feed of Out of Pocket Fridays at 4. You can also catch a lot of the other shows, Believe in Panthers podcast with running back Jonathan Stewart, former Carolina Panther, hosted by producer Desmond Johnson. But we got to get out of here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for Out of Pocket with Michael Davis. We will see you next week. And hey, enjoy the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.